I'm Eliza Curl, an actor, writer, and improviser, and most relevantly here, I'm a member of Ripley Improv. Ripley is a group of 7 women performers who came together to make art and tell stories about women who save the day, save the world, and save each other. Throughout my entire life, starting at a young age in a mostly white dance school, continuing through a mostly white high school, through to a mostly white college, and now in my professional career, I've had the experience of being the only Black woman in any given space that I'm in. I learned to internalize being the other so much that I grew to believe that a core part of my contributions in those spaces was to educate, to integrate, and to expose my white peers and educators to my different life experience for the betterment of the group or the institution. And that was in addition to making the same level of contributions as my white peers in those spaces. It took me many years of doing this type of work, unpaid, unasked for, and even when asked for, usually unappreciated, to realize that this is not, in fact, my job. And it is especially not my job to keep doing the work after it's been rejected over and over by a white institution. So that brings me to why we're here. I'm a member of Ripley Improv, which since its creation in 2016 has been a predominantly white female group. After having brought up our lack of diversity on multiple occasions throughout our history as a group, in June of 2019 at a Ripley summer retreat, I spoke up to the group about how us being a predominantly white ensemble was actively harming me and my creativity. We could never tell stories that encapsulated my experience. I would never have another actor play my mom and actually be a Black mother. There were always these caveats and adjustments to fit me into family narratives, or we would just completely ignore my race. And none of these methods of evading the elephant in the room, the whiteness of the group, were ever sustainable. And I, at that point, had had enough. So, since that conversation last summer, we as Ripley Improv have been working towards normalizing our group so that we reflect a more global expression of womanhood. We love the art that we make together, but our art is lacking without a more normalized group of women standing with us and making art together. So we're here to talk about where we've been as a group, how we're learning, and what steps we're going to take to course correct.
We formed as an ensemble as a way to create a space for women to perform improv, which is primarily a white male dominated culture. But when we created that space, what we failed to do is actively consider intersectionality. And too often, women's spaces are actually white women's spaces. And that was primarily true for us as Ripley from the beginning. And even though many of us understood the whiteness of improv in general, we did nothing to address it in our own company. We perpetuated the problem that improv culture has instead of making active choices to fix it.
Although it should have been obvious early on that Ripley was excluding others from the improv space and that we were asking too much of our one member of color, we continued to keep our ensemble restricted to the original group. When Eliza brought it to our attention, we all agreed it was important, but that agreement did not lead to quick, decisive action. We did not address the permanent cultural shift that needed to occur, nor did we acknowledge the damage we were perpetrating by continuing the inaction. We continued for several years without facing the underlying issues. It was easier and less frightening to ignore them than it was to make the actual change needed in order to inclusively expand our ensemble.
Ripley began by performing improvised plays. The first genre we selected was YA dystopia, and we were excited to tell stories about young people who saved the day, saved the world, and saved each other. And to tell those stories, we needed to study the genre. We recognized that we did not make efforts to incorporate a diverse body of source material. And as we moved into other genres, we continued to access source material that did not challenge our group makeup, which was predominantly white. Our efforts to change started late, and they did not go far enough, fast enough.
In January of this year, we committed to expanding our group to 12 members by the end of 2020 so that our ensemble better reflects the wide world of women looking for more Black, Indigenous, and people of color, members of the LGBTQ plus community, people with disabilities, and a wide representation of body size and ages. Our hope is that we will be creating a welcoming place where many voices will be heard. And we are excited to tell these stories. We can no longer tell only one part of the story or inflict harm by continuing the white narrative.
To pave the way for our new ensemble members, Aliza asked the White Ripleys to read the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. This launched the beginning of our group education efforts on white supremacy and anti-racism, and it created a shared language for us to begin addressing the ways a mostly white group can make the space safer for Aliza and for future Ripleys. We created bi-monthly meetings for White Ripleys in order to maintain regular and ongoing education. This work allows us to self-educate without making Black, Indigenous, and people of color our teachers or our therapists. Our efforts are in the beginning stages, and we are committed to the work in this area and in others.
Going forward, we commit to selecting source material that is from a diverse body of creators and stories that focus on a diverse pool of characters. We understand that we must grow our knowledge and scope of stories as we grow our ensemble.
We are having this public conversation now because Black people have had enough with police brutality in this country and the general apathy towards Black people being targeted and murdered by law enforcement. Nationally, people are beginning to acknowledge the damage done by not fighting white supremacy in every aspect of our daily life. We must all face the reality that all of our institutions, including arts institutions, have to change to be safe and normalized. As we fight for social justice in other spaces, our work must start with our own company. It should not have taken this fight to awaken change. But we are committed to ongoing action and accountability in our own organization.
So thank you for listening. To seal our intentions here, we'd like to pay homage to a major dystopian writer who is generally underrecognized and who we previously have overlooked in our own work. Aliza Pearl will be reading from Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. We also invite you to take the actions posted in chat for fighting white supremacy and racism in our country. And now, Chapter 1 of Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, read by Aliza Pearl.